"Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave through the service entrance." Those words came from my own granddaughter's lips at her gallery opening in Manhattan. The granddaughter I'd raised from age 3 after my daughter died. The girl whose hand I'd held through every nightmare, every fever, every heartbreak for 26 years. And now, standing in this converted warehouse space filled with New York's art elite, I was being escorted out like yesterday's trash. If you're reading this, I hope you'll stay with me. Because what happened next changed everything. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about what happens when love becomes evidence. My name is Margaret Chen, and at 74 years old, I thought I'd seen every kind of betrayal life could offer. But nothing prepares you for being erased by the person you raised. I'd buried my husband at 42, lost my only daughter to cancer when she was barely 30, and spent the next 2 decades raising my granddaughter Emma while working as a forensic accountant for the state of New York. I'd investigated embezzlement schemes that would make your head spin, tracked money through offshore accounts that criminals thought were untraceable, and helped send more than 30 white-collar criminals to federal prison. But nothing in my 7 decades prepared me for the cold calculation in Emma's eyes that September evening when she pretended not to know who I was. I was wearing my best pantsuit, the charcoal gray one I'd bought at Macy's during their annual sale. 3 months of careful saving, picking up extra consulting work on weekends, skipping my morning coffee from the corner shop, all so I could look presentable at Emma's first major gallery showing. The invitation had come in the mail 6 weeks earlier. Heavy cream cardstock with raised gold lettering. Emma Victoria Whitmore cordially invites you to the opening of Metamorphosis, a collection of emerging perspectives, Whitmore. Not Chen. She'd taken her father's surname, the father who disappeared before she was born and never sent a single birthday card or child support check. The father whose wealthy Connecticut family had wanted nothing to do with a half-Asian baby born to their youngest son's unfortunate mistake, as they'd apparently called my daughter. But I'd dismissed my unease. Emma was an artist. Artists reinvented themselves. That's what I told myself as I took the subway down to Chelsea, clutching a gift bag containing a vintage fountain pen I'd found in an estate sale, a Waterman from the 1940s with a mother-of-pearl inlay. Emma used to love hearing stories about my own grandmother writing letters with pens like these during the war. I thought she'd appreciate the connection to our family history. The gallery was one of those industrial spaces that probably cost more per month than I'd paid for my entire Queens apartment. Exposed brick walls, polished concrete floors, track lighting that could illuminate a small stadium. Emma's paintings hung throughout the space, bold, dramatic pieces that I had to admit were genuinely stunning, even if I didn't fully understand them. Abstract forms that seemed to shift and change depending on how you looked at them. Champagne? A server in a crisp white shirt appeared at my elbow with a tray. No, thank you. I was already feeling out of place among the crowd of art collectors in their designer clothes and statement jewelry. Women my age wearing Chanel suits that cost more than my monthly pension. Men in Italian loafers that probably required special care instructions. Everyone holding champagne flutes like they were born with them in their hands. I spotted Emma across the room, radiant in a black dress that looked like it had been painted onto her body. Her dark hair was styled in an elaborate updo that must have taken hours. She was laughing at something a tall blonde man was saying, a man whose face I vaguely recognized from somewhere. Then I saw the woman standing next to him, Vivian Whitmore, Emma's paternal grandmother. The woman who'd refused to acknowledge Emma's existence for 23 years, who'd told my dying daughter that her mongrel child would never be part of their family, who'd hung up on me when I'd called to tell them their granddaughter had graduated summa cum laude from Columbia. And Emma was calling her grandmother with the kind of affection that used to be reserved for me. I must have made some kind of sound because a gallery employee materialized at my side. "Can I help you with something?" "I'm Emma's grandmother. I'd like to say hello." The employee's smile flickered. "I'm sorry, but Ms. Whitmore specified that she's only taking meetings with collectors and gallery representatives tonight. Perhaps if you came back during regular hours..." "It's fine." I moved past her, walking toward Emma with determination. I'd changed this girl's diapers. I'd taught her to read. I'd held her hair back when she had the flu. Surely I'd earned the right to say hello at her gallery opening. "Emma, sweetheart." She turned, and for just a fraction of a second, I saw recognition flash in her eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by a blank politeness that hit me like a physical blow. 6 words and a lifetime of love vanished. "I'm sorry. Do I know you?" Vivian Whitmore's lips curved into a smile that never reached her eyes. "Darling, is this woman bothering you?" No. Emma's voice was light, dismissive. "Just a confused guest, I think. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave through the service entrance. This is a private event for invited collectors only." The room seemed to tilt sideways. Several nearby guests had turned to watch the commotion, their expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed amusement. I felt my face burning with humiliation. They say heartbreak feels like a crack. Mine sounded like laughter. "Emma, I raised you." "I'm your grandmother." "Security," Vivian said sharply, snapping her fingers at a uniformed man near the door. That's when I knew this wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. This was calculated. Emma had planned this moment, choreographed my humiliation down to the smallest detail. Just like she'd choreographed the past year of pulling away, the canceled dinners, the unreturned phone calls, the excuses about being busy with the art scene. The security guard was already moving toward me. A younger man with kind eyes who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Ma'am, if you could please come with me." "Of course." I kept my voice steady. "No scene? I understand." As I turned to leave, I heard Vivian's perfectly modulated voice carrying across the gallery. "Poor thing. You get all kinds at these public events. That's what happens when the gallery advertises online instead of keeping things properly exclusive." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Emma's laughter was part of it. I let the security guard escort me to the exit, but something in me had crystallized into something cold and hard. 26 years of love, 26 years of sacrifice, and my granddaughter had just traded it all for acceptance by a family that had never wanted her in the first place. But Emma had forgotten something important about the woman who'd raised her. I didn't give up easily, and I'd spent 40 years investigating people who thought they were smarter than everyone else. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. I should have seen it coming. But love makes you blind to warning signs that would be obvious to anyone else. It started 18 months ago, when Emma came to dinner at my apartment with a new glow about her. "Nana, I have incredible news. I've been invited to show my work at a group exhibition in Soho. I'd been so proud. My granddaughter, the artist I'd supported through 4 years at Columbia and 2 years of struggling in a tiny studio apartment in Brooklyn, finally getting recognition." "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Tell me everything." "Well, the interesting part is how it happened. I was at this fundraiser for the Metropolitan Museum, and I met this woman, Catherine Ashford. She's a major collector, and she loved the pieces I showed her on my phone. She wants to introduce me to her gallery connections." "A fundraiser at the Met? Those tickets cost thousands of dollars. How did you—" "Oh, it was through—" Emma had hesitated just for a moment. "Through a friend, someone I met at a networking event." I should have pushed harder, asked more questions. But I was just so happy to see her excited about her career after years of struggling. The next few months brought more changes. Emma started dressing differently, designer labels instead of thrift store finds. She traded her beloved motorcycle boots for Louboutin heels. Her hair went from its natural black to highlights that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. "You look beautiful," I'd said at our monthly dinner, which had moved from my apartment to increasingly expensive restaurants in Manhattan. "Business must be good." "It is." Emma had smiled, but there was something guarded in her expression. "I've been making some good connections. People who understand art as investment, not just decoration." "That's wonderful. I'm so proud of you. Actually, Nana, I wanted to talk to you about something." Emma had set down her fork, her face serious. "The gallery world is very particular about image and presentation, and some of my new connections have been asking about my background." "Your background?" "My family history. You know how these people are. They care about lineage, about where you come from. And I've been thinking, maybe it's time I connected with my father's family. The Whitmores. The family that had rejected her before she was born. The family that had made my daughter cry herself to sleep during her pregnancy. Emma, those people wanted nothing to do with you. They called you terrible things. They broke your mother's heart. That was 26 years ago, Nana. People change. Vivian Whitmore reached out to me through a mutual acquaintance. She says the family regrets how they handled things. She wants to make amends. And you believe her? Emma's eyes had flashed with something I'd never seen before. Resentment? Ambition? I believe that having the Whitmore name behind me will open doors that being Margaret Chen's granddaughter never will. The words hung in the air between us like toxic gas. I see. My voice came out steady, though my heart was breaking. And what does having the Whitmore name require? Nothing, just letting them be part of my life, letting them introduce me to their world. Is that so terrible? It should have been a red flag the size of Manhattan. But I'd told myself Emma was young, ambitious, trying to make her way in a cutthroat industry. I'd told myself she'd come back to her senses once she saw what those people were really like. I'd been so wrong. The night of the gallery opening, I took the subway back to Queens in a daze. My apartment felt smaller than ever, crammed with photos of Emma at every age. Emma's first day of kindergarten, Emma's high school graduation, Emma's college acceptance letter, Emma's first art show at a coffee shop in Brooklyn when she was 22, beaming as she stood next to paintings I'd helped her frame. I sat in my worn armchair, the same one I'd rocked her in when she had nightmares about losing her mother, and let the tears come. Great gulping sobs that shook my entire body, not just for the humiliation of tonight, but for the loss of someone I'd loved more than my own life. My phone buzzed. A text from my old colleague, David Wu, who still worked in the forensic accounting division. Saw something on social media about your granddaughter's gallery opening. Everything okay? No, I thought. Nothing is okay. But I typed back, fine, just tired. Another buzz. This time from my best friend Rosa, who'd been my neighbor for 30 years. Come over for tea tomorrow. I made your favorite almond cookies. Rosa understood loss. She'd buried 2 husbands and a son. She knew when someone needed comfort and when they needed distraction. But it was the third message that made me sit up straighter. An email from someone I didn't recognize, with the subject line, regarding Emma Whitmore's gallery funding. Ms. Chen, you don't know me, but I'm a freelance journalist who covers the New York art scene. I've been investigating some irregularities in gallery funding and exhibition financing. Your granddaughter's name came up in connection with some interesting transactions. I think you should know what she's gotten herself into. Can we talk? Jennifer Park. I stared at the email for a long time. Part of me wanted to delete it, to protect Emma from whatever scandal might be brewing. But another part, the part that had spent 40 years investigating financial crimes, couldn't ignore the word irregularities. I typed back, tomorrow afternoon, 2 o'clock, the coffee shop on 42nd and Queens Boulevard. Then I opened my laptop and started doing what I did best. Following the money. The gallery listing showed Emma's exhibition was sponsored by Whitmore Capital Investments and the Ashford Foundation. I pulled up the corporate filings for both organizations. Whitmore Capital was a private equity firm run by Emma's uncle, Richard Whitmore, the blonde man I'd seen at the gallery. The Ashford Foundation was a nonprofit arts organization. I spent the next 6 hours diving into public records, tax filings, and financial disclosures. What I found made my blood run cold. The Ashford Foundation was under investigation by the New York Attorney General's Office for charity fraud. They'd been accepting donations meant for emerging artists and funneling the money through shell corporations into private accounts. The foundation's director? Catherine Ashford, daughter of Vivian Whitmore's college roommate. Whitmore Capital Investments had been flagged by the SEC for suspicious trading activity. Multiple investors had filed complaints about misrepresented returns and missing funds. And Emma's gallery show? According to the fine print in the exhibition contract I found filed with the gallery's business license, Emma had signed over 60% of all sales proceeds to cover exhibition costs and promotional investments. The standard rate was 40%, and that was considered high. My granddaughter, brilliant and talented as she was, had gotten herself tangled up with people who made Ponzi schemers look like amateurs. And this time, love wouldn't blind me. It would guide my aim. I printed everything out, creating a file that grew thicker by the hour. Corporate structures, shell companies, offshore accounts, money laundering patterns I'd seen 100 times before in my career. By 3 a.m, I had a clear picture of what was happening. The Whitmores weren't just snobbish aristocrats trying to exclude their half-Asian granddaughter. They were criminals using her as a front for an elaborate fraud scheme. Emma's emerging artist status made her the perfect person to sell paintings at inflated prices to fake buyers who were actually shell companies controlled by the Whitmores themselves. The sales would be recorded as legitimate income, laundering money from their other illegal activities through the art market. And Emma, desperate for acceptance and validation, had walked right into their trap. Jennifer Park turned out to be a sharp-eyed woman in her 30s with a recording device and a notebook full of questions. We met at the coffee shop, sitting at a corner table away from other customers. "Thank you for meeting with me, Ms. Chen. I know this must be difficult. Tell me everything." She did. The story was even worse than what I'd uncovered. The Ashford Foundation had defrauded dozens of young artists, promising exhibitions and sales while taking 70–80% of their earnings. Several artists had been left with crippling debt after the foundation charged them for promotional services that never materialized. "Your granddaughter is different, though," Jennifer said carefully. "She's not being defrauded. She's part of the scheme. We have emails showing she knew the sales were fake. She knew the buyers were shell companies. She agreed to it because the Whitmores promised her entree into the elite art world and a trust fund when she turns 30. No, the word came out automatically. Emma wouldn't. Ms. Chen, I have copies of the emails. She discussed the scheme with Richard Whitmore explicitly. She knew what she was signing up for." Jennifer slid a folder across the table. I opened it with shaking hands. The emails were damning. Emma's words, in her distinctive typing style, always using M-dashes instead of commas, always signing off with onward, discussing fake sales, shell companies, and the need to keep certain people out of the loop. One email made me feel physically sick. "Richard, Grandmother M is getting suspicious about the funding sources. I think we need to cut her out completely. She's a forensic accountant and could recognize the patterns if she looks too closely. What if we just don't invite her to the opening? Make it easier for everyone." That's when I stopped being her grandmother and became her investigator. Emma. My granddaughter hadn't just rejected me for social status. She'd rejected me because I was a liability to her criminal enterprise. "What are you going to do with this information?" I asked Jennifer. "I'm planning a major exposé, but I wanted to talk to you first because—" She hesitated. "Because you're a victim in this too. And because your expertise could help us build a stronger case. The Attorney General's office is interested in bringing federal charges, but they need more evidence of the money laundering operation." I thought about Emma at 3 years old, crying for her mother. Emma at 10, winning her first art competition. Emma at 18, hugging me on graduation day and promising we'd always be a team. Then I thought about Emma last night, looking through me like I was invisible. "What do you need me to do?" The investigation took 6 weeks. 6 weeks of me working with Jennifer and a team of federal prosecutors to build an airtight case against the Whitmores and the Ashford Foundation. 6 weeks of tracing money through offshore accounts, connecting shell companies, and documenting a fraud scheme that had bilked millions from investors and donors. The hardest part was finding evidence of Emma's involvement. The prosecutors needed to prove she wasn't just a naive victim. They needed to show she'd knowingly participated in the scheme. I found it in a place Emma never expected me to look: her old laptop. The one she'd left at my apartment when she upgraded to a MacBook Pro. She'd asked me to donate it to charity, but I'd never gotten around to it. The hard drive contained deleted emails, financial spreadsheets showing her share of the fraudulent sales, and a journal entry that broke my heart. Nana would never understand this world. She thinks art should be pure, honest, authentic. She doesn't get that everything is a transaction, everything has a price. The Whitmores understand that. They understand me in a way she never could. It's time to cut ties with the old life. Time to become the person I was always meant to be. The person she was always meant to be. Not the granddaughter I'd raised, but someone willing to commit federal crimes for acceptance and money. The gallery opening had been on September 15th. The arrests happened on November 2nd. During the Ashford Foundation's annual gala at the Plaza Hotel. I wasn't there for the arrests. But I saw the news coverage from my apartment in Queens, watching as federal agents led Richard Whitmore and Catherine Ashford out in handcuffs while New York's art elite scattered like pigeons. Vivian Whitmore was arrested at her Connecticut estate the same night. Emma was taken into custody at her newly rented Tribeca loft, the luxury apartment she'd moved into just 3 weeks earlier, paid for with fraudulent art sales. The news anchors called it the biggest art fraud case in New York history. $40 million in fake sales, hundreds of victims, a network of shell companies spanning 6 countries. My phone exploded with messages, friends and former colleagues expressing shock, reporters asking for interviews, and one message that made me stare at the screen for 10 minutes. Nana, I need help. They're saying 15, 20 years, please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please help me. Funny how people remember family when the handcuffs click. I looked at that message for a long time. Then I got up, made myself a cup of tea, and sat down to write a response. The federal courthouse was cold the day of Emma's arraignment. I sat in the public gallery, watching my granddaughter shuffle in wearing an orange jumpsuit and ankle shackles. She looked small, terrified, nothing like the confident artist who dismissed me from her gallery opening. Her eyes found mine in the crowd. I saw hope flash across her face, then desperation. The judge read the charges: conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, tax evasion. The prosecutor outlined the government's case: the shell companies, the fake sales, the deliberate deception of investors and donors. Does the defendant wish to make a statement? The judge asked. Emma's lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client was a victim in this case. She was manipulated by older, more experienced criminals who took advantage of her desire for artistic recognition. That's not true. Emma's voice was barely a whisper. I knew what I was doing. I knew it was wrong. I wanted to be someone important, someone who mattered. The judge's expression was unreadable. Ms. Whitmore, you'll have plenty of time to reflect on your choices. And so would I, on how love can survive even when forgiveness can't. Bail is set at $500,000. Emma's lawyer looked at me expectantly. I was the only family she had who wasn't also under arrest. I stood up, picked up my purse, and walked out of the courtroom. 3 days later, I received a letter from Emma. It had been opened and read by prison officials before being sent to me. Standard procedure for correspondence from inmates awaiting trial. Dear Nana, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I hurt you in ways that can never be repaired. But please, I'm begging you, help me. I can't survive in here. The other inmates know who I am. They know what I did. Yesterday, someone threw food at me in the cafeteria. Last night, I couldn't sleep because someone kept screaming threats through the walls. I made terrible mistakes. I betrayed you. I betrayed everything you taught me about integrity and honesty and treating people with respect. I got seduced by money and status and the promise of belonging to something elite. But I'm still your Emma. I'm still the little girl you raised. Doesn't that count for anything? Don't I deserve a chance at redemption? Please, I'll do anything. I'll testify against the Whitmores. I'll cooperate with the prosecutors. Just please help me get out of here. Love, Emma. I read the letter 3 times. Then I sat down at my kitchen table and wrote a response. Dear Emma, you're right that you betrayed me. There's a kind of calm that comes only after your heart finally breaks. Completely. You traded 26 years of unconditional love for acceptance, from people who saw you as nothing but a tool for their crimes. You humiliated me in front of strangers. You erased me from your life because my working-class background was embarrassing to your new wealthy friends. But you're wrong about one thing. You're not still my Emma. That little girl died somewhere along the way, replaced by someone willing to commit fraud and hurt innocent people for money and status. I spent 6 weeks helping build the case against you. I provided the prosecutors with evidence from your old laptop. I traced the financial transactions that proved your knowing participation in the fraud. I made sure they had everything they needed to prove you weren't just a victim. Why? Because the Emma I raised taught me something important. Actions have consequences. You used to say that all the time when you were younger. You said it when you got in trouble for cheating on a test in 8th grade. You said it when you wrecked your bicycle doing something reckless. Actions have consequences, Emma, and these are yours. I won't be posting your bail. I won't be hiring additional lawyers. I won't be visiting you in prison. You wanted to become someone important, someone who mattered in the elite art world. You got your wish. You're important now. Important enough to be facing 20 years in federal prison. Redemption isn't something someone else gives you. It's something you earn through genuine change and accountability. Maybe prison will give you time to figure out who you really want to be. Maybe you'll come out the other side as someone better than the person you became. But that journey is yours alone. I raised you, loved you, and did everything I could to help you become a good person. You chose a different path. Now you have to walk it yourself. There's an old Chinese proverb my grandmother used to tell me. A wise man makes his own decisions. An ignorant man follows public opinion. You followed the Whitmore's opinions because they promised you status and wealth. That was your choice. These consequences are the result. Goodbye, Emma. Margaret Chen Emma was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison as part of a plea deal. She testified against Richard and Vivian Whitmore, both of whom received significantly longer sentences. Catherine Ashford fled to Brazil but was eventually extradited and sentenced to 15 years. The Ashford Foundation was dissolved. More than 30 young artists received restitution from the seized assets. Several went on to have successful careers in the legitimate art world. I retired from consulting work the year after Emma's sentencing. I travel now, something I never had time or money for when I was raising a child and working full-time. I've been to China to visit my grandmother's village. I've seen the art museums of Paris and Barcelona and Rome. Sometimes people recognize me from the news coverage. You're that woman, they say. The one who turned in her own granddaughter. I'm the woman who refused to enable criminal behavior, I correct them. Even when it was someone I loved. I think about Emma sometimes. Not often, but sometimes. I wonder if prison changed her. I wonder if she's using her artistic talent to teach other inmates. I wonder if she's genuinely remorseful or just sorry she got caught. But mostly I wonder if she ever understood the real lesson I tried to teach her throughout her childhood. That character isn't about who you are when people are watching. It's about who you are when you think no one will know. Emma thought she could become someone important by association with wealthy criminals. She thought status and money mattered more than integrity and loyalty. She was wrong, and now she has 12 years to figure out why. Last week I received another letter from her. The return address showed she'd been transferred to a minimum security facility in Pennsylvania. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity got the better of me. Dear Nana, I don't expect you to respond to this. I don't even know if you're reading my letters. But I need to tell you something. You were right about everything. I've had 4 years to think about what I did and why I did it. I've had therapy. The prison offers counseling services. I've been teaching art classes to other inmates. I've been reading books about ethics and philosophy and the nature of identity. And I finally understand what you tried to teach me my whole life. That who you are isn't determined by your last name or your bank account or who you know. It's determined by your choices and how you treat people. I made terrible choices. I treated you horribly. And I'm not asking for forgiveness because I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I finally get it. I finally understand that the most important person I ever had in my life was the one I betrayed for people who never cared about me at all. I have 8 more years in here. When I get out, I'll be 42 years old. I don't know what kind of future I'll have with a federal conviction. I don't know if I'll ever make art again or if anyone will want to see it if I do. But I know this. If I get the chance to be someone's grandmother someday, I'm going to tell them about a woman named Margaret Chen who loved me unconditionally until I proved I didn't deserve it. I'm going to tell them that she taught me the hardest lesson I ever learned, that love without accountability isn't love at all. It's just enabling. Thank you for loving me enough to hold me accountable. Thank you for being the grandmother I needed, even when I wanted something different. I hope you're happy wherever you are and whatever you're doing. You earned that happiness. Love, Emma. I read that letter 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer with all the others she's sent over the years. Maybe someday I'll respond. Maybe when she gets out, we'll sit down over coffee and try to rebuild something from the ashes of what we lost. Maybe not. But either way, I know I made the right choice. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is refuse to rescue them from the consequences of their actions. Sometimes the best thing you can do for someone you love is let them fall so they can learn to stand on their own. I've lived long enough to know that life rarely gives us tidy endings or perfect resolutions. But I've also lived long enough to know that integrity matters more than comfort, that accountability matters more than approval, and that loving someone doesn't mean protecting them from reality. Emma wanted to be someone important. She wanted to matter in the eyes of New York's elite. I wanted her to be someone good, someone honest, someone who treated other people with dignity and respect. We both got what we wanted in the end. She became important, important enough to make headlines across the country. And I remained true to my values, even when it cost me the person I loved most in the world. Was it worth it? People ask me that sometimes, usually with a mix of curiosity and judgment in their voices. I tell them the truth, I don't know. I saved 30 young artists from the same fraud that ensnared my granddaughter. I helped bring criminals to justice. I held true to the principles I'd spent a lifetime defending. But I lost my granddaughter. I lost the little girl I'd rocked to sleep, the teenager I'd comforted through heartbreak, the young woman I'd cheered through graduation. Was it worth it? I suppose that depends on what you value more, the people you love or the principles you believe in. For me, they were one and the same. And when I had to choose between enabling someone I loved or holding them accountable, I chose accountability. I sleep well at night, and sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I pull out Emma's letters and read them again, searching for evidence of the granddaughter I raised. Sometimes I find her in those words. Sometimes I don't, but either way, I know I did my best. I loved her. I raised her. I taught her right from wrong, and when she chose wrong anyway, I refused to pretend it was right. That's not cruelty. That's love with a backbone. That's all any of us can do. Love the people in our lives, hold them accountable, and hope that someday they'll understand why both things matter equally. My name is Margaret Chen. I'm 74 years old, and I'm the woman who turned in her own granddaughter for fraud. Some people call that betrayal. I call it love. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.